I got permission yesterday from Chief David Roddy to do what I have been doing for several years now, and that is criticize the Department of Police in Chattanooga. As he said to the graduates of the Citizens Police Academy yesterday, now that they've gone through the course, 9 weeks altogether, they have that license. They have permission, a license to do that very thing, to look at cop shows and criticize, to look at even here in Chattanooga, officers on the job whom they can criticize now with his permission because they've gone through the class and are something they're more knowledgeable than they were before. And I like thinking of having licenses. You know, I love licenses, and a license just by definition is permission to do something which is otherwise illegal, unlawful, or tortious. A license is a grant. It is a favor to you. And here, now that I have my red embossed form, which I'm holding up here for our YouTube viewer. If you are on YouTube, you can see that I actually have it. I'm a graduate of this esteemed academy. And here on Facebook also, we are live on Facebook at Nooga Radio. And my name is spelled there. It's correct in purple type, signed by Chief David Roddy and Sergeant Wayne Jefferson, who is from the Office of Community Outreach, which is part of the effort by the police department to engage in the citizenry, engage in people who are the subjects of its action, who are, in the end, they are the source of the authority of police. Police, the word cop, COP, means citizen on patrol. Police have their origins in the people, and they are simply a professionalization and expertization of what we used to have just ordinarily among the people of our country and of our city and state. That would be, we're all involved in catching a criminal in the middle of an act. We're all involved in maintaining peace and apprehending evildoers or wrongdoers. And whether it's a bank robber or a thief or a rapist or someone who has assaulted a person or stolen a woman's purse, we all have an interest in apprehending that person to bring that person to justice. And that process, because we're all Americans, we turn everything into an industry. It seems like we have now the police industry, which professionalizes that whole task: solving crimes, keeping record, bringing people to bar, to the judge. We don't do it privately or personally. Very few of us know how to do that anymore, right? And we have the pros to do it, the professionals, the experts. We have an expert economy, and experts control virtually every sphere in our lives today. And I think we're a lot poorer for having yielded these means of our security, our personal security, to professionals. But nonetheless, these men and women employed by the city government, they're on the payroll. They're city employees. There are 500 sworn officers serving Mayor Andy Burke. These are his people. Mayor Burke is to be commended for the apprehension of every Amber Alert suspect, every murderer, every rapist. If someone is caught, Mayor Burke should positively glow in the fruit of his men and women's labor in blue, because they serve him. They are his arm, if you will, his arm for the enforcement of ordinances. The city charter makes it very clear that the police department serves the ordinance, the corporate capacity, the city's laws. The ordinances have the effect of law. An ordinance is as binding upon you if you are subject to it as a state law or even a federal law, even though it's just a corporation ordinance. So the department has officers have that authority to have ordinances respected, and also some statutes in the state government of the state legislature adopted also for various purposes. And so that is you might say, what kind of question is that, David Tulis? That's a very arcane question. Where does police authority come from? That's something I've looked into a great deal, and am trying to inform myself about that. Today is First Responder Friday. Every Friday, our radio station, Nooga Radio, here 92.7 FM on our off-speed day. Fridays is a wonderful off-speed day. I have more work than normal, but less, because I have often a great variety of people to whom to introduce you. Today, let me just introduce to you Scott Bales, who's a lieutenant in the police department. And he is our man for today, and putting himself in harm's way for public safety, public benefit. And we are honoring him today as a first responder of note here in Hamilton County, here in Chattanooga. And if you know someone who you would like to nominate for this First Responder Friday note and moment of flag waving over him or her, please send us the name to nougaradio@gmail.com. That's Nouga. You know how to spell that, right? nougaradio@gmail.com. And we want to let that person know how much our station appreciates and values that good soul's work on behalf of the public safety and the public interest. My name is David Tulis, and the number to call, do feel free to do that, is 800-8949, 800-8949. We've had a lot going on today, and so, but don't feel like like your moment of consideration needs to be delayed. No, just call if you have something to say, and we can keep it short if you like, and we'll get on with business. You have business too, and your business in a way is my business, since I'm a member of the press, and want really to serve you. That's our goal here, is to serve our listener with the absolute best. And if you call, that's because you think you have something that's would be good or pretty good, if not the absolute best of things to consider for a few minutes. If you want to get my listeners here, do think about my other listeners here. You're my listener, and you can talk to the other listener. And there may be one out there, there may be, but as far as you're it. And in fact, to my mind, you are it. David Tulis here for you. Now, the police academy, the Citizens Academy, ended yesterday, and I am alive, though I must say I was slain twice in the shoot, don't shoot scenario, the game playing, the role playing, where the civilians, as we're called, we're just civilians. You have the military, and then you have the civilian. We're the civilians, right? We do have a kind of army of occupation, which is what the police are in every city. They are an army of occupation, a standing army. Though we are protected from having to quarter them in our houses by the constitutional provision that came early in the colonial's mind about what to do in forming a new people. Make sure that we do not have to quarter the king's troops with their muskets and their red uniforms hanging in our closets while they're in our living room and soaping up our wine from the cellar. We don't have to deal with that, but we have this group of people, and there are reforms afoot now. 15 months ago, I think it was now, David Roddy was named as the new chief by Mayor Andy Burke. Fred Fletcher departing after 3 years, in which the emphasis on his government of that department was community relations. And I think Mayor Burke, who reads the news, watches what happens around the country, seeing what happened in 2014, a hideous example of police overkill, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and much interest in reform, the execution of Philando Castile, and many other instances. And we've all seen these. We've seen these. It's unavoidable on Facebook, on FB, the great censor. We're still there. We're still on Facebook. I'm trying to get out from that venue. But this department has been making reforms. There are reforms afoot, and I want to, I guess, maybe just mention the highlights of this class. There was, like I said, it was 9 weeks. I made all of them, all the sessions, but one. David Lewis is one of the instructors. And in fact, he is part of the you might say the community outreach program. Very mild man who worked in surveillance of the government slum for year after year after year. And gave us the talk on residents or people in town who are maybe not residents, but just people who are here, people under his purview who have mental problems, who have addiction problems, who have personality disorders untreated. And I'd say that one major reform that David Roddy is for and is pushing, as promised by Mayor Burke, in August. Now that's 15 months ago, August, when he was elevated from the police ranks to the chief. One of the promises of that speech and that encounter, just by the way, was reform. It was there, and interestingly enough, the other press coverage of that event, as I make note today at Nuganomics.com, our chief sponsor, did not mention, really did not highlight the fact that as far as Mayor Burt could tell, David Roddy was the closest thing to reform. Now, I don't know how strong the reform impulse is in Mayor Burt's breast. I don't know, but he chose David Roddy, and that was one of the things that was in the speech. So presumably the parts there are working together. The man, David Roddy, his experience, local son, and loves his town. And it's, in a way, it's hard to have reforms by having your own guy do them. Reforms generally don't come from insiders who can't break the bonds of connection, affection, familiarity with other people. It's hard to hurt people, right? By suddenly forcing a man to change jobs or pushing a man from one office to another that for which he has no affinity. That's what reform often takes, a shaking up. It's hard to have an insider do that. David Roddy, the insider, because he's been here for a long time, right? So there's an advantage on having a local man, a devout professional, but also disadvantages. So the Mayor Burt weighed those pros and cons and said, David Roddy's my man. And I think the reform impulse that Mayor Burt has heard, as he does read widely about municipal government, municipal affairs, what are the trends, what trends to get on, what trends to fight. And he saw that people, the American people, you included, my listener here in Chattanooga, want reform, if not abolition of policing, at least reform to stave off abolition. I think abolition is something that's going to happen sooner or later. And we need to look toward a post-policing society, a post-policing municipal life, as Alex Vitale has done in his excellent book. He's a political liberal, by the way, probably an Obama fan. But his book on the end of policing is very, very good. I mean, I can read through some of his left-wing welfarism, but still there are many good points in that book. And I think Vitale is probably right. Now, I have recommended him before. Now, here in Chattanooga, the reforms are I'd say, well, there are some that come from the inside. And one is led by David Lewis, whom I mentioned. I don't have his rank, but he is involved. He's mid-level management now, I suppose, after having been a patrolman for all those years. And he's overseeing this, I'll say the de-escalation crisis intervention training program and a crisis intervention team. He has something to do with that. And we heard all about this labor, again, toward, you might say, the demilitarization, the defanging of the policeman. And some on the conservatives would say, well, we can't have that. We need to have cops who bash heads in, like, Mike Steele here at the radio station. He's the son of a police officer in Philadelphia. Says, well, cops need to bang these gangbangers' heads in, right? Don't serve them pizza, serve them 10 millimeters, right? That kind of thing. And we kind of argue over this, but one reform that Chief Roddy has brought about, we could say we're late getting it here, and that's the Memphis model. And David Lewis tells us about that. It was founded in 1987 with the killing of a man who had a knife. Some white male cops arrive, a 911 call. Black male is cutting himself. The cops demand that he drop the knife. The more demands that they make, the more agitated he becomes. They take that as a threat, and then they kill him. So that was where the CIT program comes from. That's 30 years old. 1987. That's 20 years old. 97, 2000, that's 30 years old. So it's a 30-year model that we're finally getting to here. So reform is late coming. And I think if we have a new mayor, the reforms may come more rapidly, in more rapid succession. If it's someone like Marie Mott, who's I'd vote for Marie for mayor. And we have just a footnote here. Jason Kirk, what do we need to hear from you?
Just wanted to let you know, David, and everyone listening, that there is a 3-car accident. There's 3 separate accidents on Interstate 75 right now, causing a major backup to 75. We don't normally break in for stuff like this, but this one right here is actually a pretty severe accident. So if you're in the Interstate 75, Interstate 24 split, avoid it.
Where is that going toward Atlanta or going toward Knoxville? Where are these breakages, Jason?
It's actually on both sides, but it's northbound coming out of Catoosa. I'm coming across the Tennessee line through East Ridge.
Northbound lanes.
Northbound. And then there's a separate accident if you're coming south on Interstate 75 at the split as well. So both sides, there's a couple of accidents going on.
Well, thank you very much, Jason Kirk. We're here.
Welcome.
Keep me informed. Promise you'll keep my listener informed, Jason, if there are some changes.
We always do.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And I've got to complain to management that I just don't have enough time. David Lewis, now, let me just tell you what we have. We do have this reform. We have this crisis intervention training. And if you read Nuganomics.com today, do be a subscriber. Okay. That's, if you want to know what's happening really in Chattanooga, from my perspective, which has some value. Okay. It's not comprehensive, but it has some value. If you think I'm good as a host, maybe I'm passable as a writer, and it's Nuganomics.com. Just subscribe to it. But there's my report about the event last night, and also the prospect of reform. And I'm going to say that reform is taking place. It's slow in coming. It's not as dramatic as it could be, but there are things that are happening in favor of you, my listener, your liberties and and I would say your protection, because in some respect, you're more in danger from a cop than you are from a terrorist. You're probably 7 or 8 times more likely to be injured by a white Anglo-Saxon or a black African-American police officer than you are by a Muslim, Jesus Christ hating terrorist, right? Those are not the threat. Okay. We don't have a jihad from the Middle East to worry about here in Chattanooga. We have much more so a kind of jihad of people who are different, a jihad of people by the police in all these jurisdictions. Against people who are non-compliant, who say no, who demand their rights. People like that often end up getting shot, injured, tased. We know in Red Bank there is a grievous problem that I've not been attending as much to Red Bank as I'd like to, but there is a problem there of the cops stealing people's cameras for making record now of encounters with cops. Listen, if you're if you're in Red Bank, not East Ridge, no, that's no problem there, not at all. But in Red Bank, there has been a serious problem. And Alan DeBerry tells me that he had 2 charges dropped in his filming cops causing a riot. The cops caused a riot at that venue, and he was involved in filming it and got arrested for it, and his camera confiscated. His phone, his Apple smartphone confiscated. That's Red Bank. So watch out. So we don't want that to happen. We want less and less of that to happen, and we want there to be a cultural change, an alteration, an improvement, an amelioration in the soul of these officers. Now, David Lewis says that mental health consumers, as they're called, are not, they're not suspects anymore. They're not subjects as much. They're mental health consumers. Now, the change of vocabulary is important. Again, brought about by the Memphis model, 30 years old now, coming here. People who are depressive, bipolar, schizophrenic, who have co-occurring disorders. The class heard about that. People who have age-related dementia, such as Alzheimer's, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He says, we try not to take them to jail if we can absolutely get away with it. We make a decision for the greater good. Can we get them evaluated and try to get them stabilized? Or do we have to put them in jail? Sometimes the offense is great and jail cannot be avoided. About 24% of women in jail, David Lewis says, the police officer, 24% of women in the county jail have serious mental illness. And the figure I got from him, 14%, I make studious notes in that class. So I guess I'm an A, not just graduate of the Chattanooga Police Academy. If it were evaluated, I probably would get an A because I make such careful notes of what is said. Just for the record, I keep a record here. And I want to tell you about these notes. I got to complain to management. What is 2 hours a day? That's just not enough. It's just not enough. What is de-escalation? How does de-escalation work? Now, that is the reform. That David Roddy knows that's the reform. Not, I said, David, Chief Roddy. I don't do first names with police chiefs, okay? let me help you. Let's talk about Jeffrey Abbott. Let's talk about other police officers who put themselves at risk and did not have to pull the trigger, did not have to pull the taser electrocution wand either, and who brought someone who is completely out of his head, not killing him. We end a violent act, and that's called de-escalation. Heard about that? Speaking softly, orienting the person to the president. Ask that person to be a veteran. Show respect. Validate that citizen, that risk. Allow time. Be patient. Time, space, and cover. Those are the main elements of police reform. If those are brought into the Chattanooga Police Department, we're going to have much less violence, many fewer arrests. Well, I know the machinery wants arrests. I know it craves them, but there'll be less. Better for people like you and others.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
16 alleged members of the Ghost-Faced Gangsters gang were arrested in Georgia, spread out across northwest Georgia in areas including Rossville, Ringgold, and Lafayette. The Drug Task Force says that they've been involved in drug deals. The Georgia Street Gang and Terrorism Prevention Act is what allowed for their arrest. They'll be tried in Walker County. Firefighters saved an apartment on Mitchell Avenue. The fire department spokesman Bruce Garner told the press that they arrived to find a porch completely engulfed in flames. They managed to put the fire out in just a few minutes. If they hadn't, the whole building would have been consumed. The WWTA canceled its Thursday night meeting and instead opted to talk to homeowners individually on Man Gap Road.